Hello friends and welcome back. I'm Nick. This is MSFS Flight Plans, your ultimate destination for finding all the ultimate destinations here in the sim. We are out in London for today's adventure, and as you guys can probably imagine, I have been wanting to fly this city for a very long time, but you probably also know that it was plagued with all kinds of problems in 2020, not the least of which was some horrific scenery on the ground, which, to be honest with you, may have been fixed after that last UK World Update. I heard that it got a lot better. I never flew it again after that or before I put that in. I did fly around the UK some more, but it was just so bad and we had so many other flights to take that I just never made it back out here. I was hoping it would look better in 2024, and boy does it ever. It looks at least as good as it did in 2020 without the UK World Update. Probably looks comparable to it now, which is the big deal for me, but I felt like the performance out here is a lot better in 2024, so that's fantastic. And I'm going to show it all to you guys as we look at all the wonderful sights and learn about everything down there on the ground. Well, most of it. There's a lot to see. So I thought about taking a helicopter on this trip, but we've taken so many helicopters lately, and I really wanted to fly this ultralight. This is the CGS Hawk Arrow 2, and I'm not even sure if it was available in 2020. If it was, I never flew it, but I wanted to check it out because it's one of the few planes that is available and perfectly working in 2024. And as I was doing my walk around, you know, we don't do plane reviews here, but I got to show this to you guys if you haven't gotten up close to this thing yet. Look at the stitching on that and the texturing on the fabric, the filth there accumulated on the windshield. Our buddy Will in the back seat. Well, Billy's never been in a ultralight before, so we'll see how he does. But look at the edge of the wings here. This is my favorite part. Let me show you this. I just got to show you. I'm easily amused. Look at that bolt on there. It's perfect. All the little rivets and everything are just perfect. It's a very well-made plane. Very cool. The engine looks fantastic. Look at that thing. And it's pretty fun to fly. All right, so let's go ahead and hop in. I'll show you a couple of interesting quirks about it, and then we'll get going. You know what? I started inside of it the last time, and I can't remember if I... Oh, that'll do it. Perfect. All right. That's not something wrong with the plane. That's some kind of glitch on that building there. I just noticed that this piece of vinyl is missing on this side. I wonder if we can take this one off, because that would be pretty cool. There we go. All right, so that's how you do it. If you want to take your panels off, click somewhere down here. Yep, right down there. It looks like that's where the finger comes in. All right, one very cool thing about this plane. Watch what's going to happen when I step on my toe brakes. Look at the end of the stick there, the top of it. That's where the brakes are on this thing. And I can't imagine trying to... If you're just doing a straight stop, not a big deal, because you can pull with one finger. But imagine trying to manipulate that to steer on the ground with one finger. That probably takes a little bit of practice, I would think. And this does not have a parking brake, so let's look at the map real quick because I'm going to have to pull the finger brakes to get started. All right, we won't zoom out because I'm sure you know where London is. We're going to leave from London City, not Heathrow, because most of the big clumps of things to look at are right down here. You can see I did put some more bookmarks out here. So if you want to leave from Heathrow or even further out, I'll kind of show you what that stuff is when we do our close-up satellite map tour at the end. But for now, we're just going to fly north of the Thames for a bit. Circle around the zoo, a bunch of palaces, castles, all that stuff down there, all the things you love to love about London. Then we'll come back around this way and back into London City. I think the whole trip is about 30 miles, and this thing cruises about 76 knots, so I'm thinking probably 30 minutes in the air, which is just perfect for our channel. And with that, let me step on my toe/finger brakes. We'll turn our wigwags on for the whole flight. That's the same thing as landing lights in this plane. We're going to try to stay between 1,000 and 1,500, but I did leave the wind on, even though it's probably going to be a little bit bumpy. Because if we're in an ultralight and it's really, really mild, I think that just seems too unrealistic. So we're going to bump around a little bit. Okay, and then turn these on, give it just a little bit of throttle, and fire it up. Well, it's definitely a little bit louder without the panels on, so that's cool, and it sounds really good too. Okay, that's on standby now, so we'll get that to altitude mode. That's on altitude, there we go. And we'll let this thing get itself fired up while we're taxiing. Okay, let's get going. Finger brakes off. Yeah, that engine sounds nice. It sounds a lot better, I think, with those panels off. Very cool. So the taxiway is kind of funky over here, and the real taxiway may be on the other side of the runway. There's some lines marked out over here on this white area to our right. So I followed that down last time, and then I wound up in the dirt. So there's a strip of asphalt just on the other side of that, which is what we're going to take. Again, I'm not sure if that's the actual taxiway or not. I didn't pull my map out. But I think it'll get us down to the end of the runway. I do have one add-on pack installed for this. I'm happy to report that ORBX's London City Landmarks pack is working. And if you go to ORBX's site, if you have anything from ORBX and you go to ORBX Direct, they've got about 10 packs or so now that are working in here. And I'd say it's about 50-50. Some of the stuff I flew without the pack in before. Some of the stuff looks more realistic with just the photogrammetry, but some things that I really wanted to look better definitely did with the ORBX pack. So I'll kind of tell you as we're flying around what the differences are with and without it. And if you want to pick it up, I think it's like $7 on ORBX right now, so not too bad at all. Just to see how everything's working for 2024. So if you saw our last flight, that was that video montage I made out in the Colorado Canyons in the Huey, which I thought was a really cool video, and so did a whole lot of other people. But I'll tell you who didn't like it, the trolls. They came out in force for that one, and I've told you guys many times on this channel, I have played to rough crowds my entire life. Live crowds most of the time. So I am completely unfazed by any of it, but I don't like when they mess with other members that are trying to put comments in there, so I usually just block them and never think about it again. And then I started thinking, you know, that's just kind of part of the experience of being a content creator, and if you ever comment on YouTube, I mean, it's just part and parcel to all of it. And I know most content creators just don't even moderate their comments at this point, especially if they have big channels, but I like to see what all people that have something positive to say are saying, and I like talking with you guys. So I do moderate them because I don't want the trolls messing with anybody, but then I started thinking, you know, it's kind of like going to a football game and having the parents, or a soccer match, that's my world. Parents that are screaming at the ref the whole time, like you can't stand it while it's happening, but it's also just part of the charm of the whole thing. So I started thinking, is there a way to benefit trolls, show our appreciation for what they do bring to the table, and benefit the community? Is that even possible? And I think it is. And once we get towards the end of the flight, I'm going to tell you what my plan is to embrace all of those trolls out there. All you trolls. I love you just as much as the non-trolls. You've got a place in this world too. So I've got a plan. Yep, you're going to love it. So if you're a troll thinking about being a troll, or have someone close to you that's a very experienced troll, check out probably the last 10 minutes of the flight. I'm going to pay trolls to be trolls. You heard that right. That's my teaser. You'll have to stick around to hear my plan. Alright, we'll just stop at the hold short real quick because I think we need 2 notches of flaps for this thing to get up in the air. And since I have this big button right here, I'll just use it right here in the cockpit. 1, 2. Oh, I think I gave it 3. And boy, I wouldn't know the flaps are even working because it doesn't make any kind of noise, and I don't see any kind of flap indicator on here, but I can feel it in my butt kicker. Which, yet again, I assumed was not working because of 2024. I was all mad about it, figuring they'd eventually fix it. Uninstalled the program, reinstalled it, was getting ready to call the people that make it, and figured I would check my cord, which wraps around my chair a couple times and then up under my desk. And sure enough, it was unplugged. That was it. Now it works perfectly fine, naturally. So we're going to get a little bit of performance issues out here. This is a huge city, much like New York City or any other big cities, Paris. We'll get some stuttering, we'll get some flashing, a little bit of popping, maybe a little bit of tiling in the water. But again, my benchmark has always been, is it as good as it was in 2020? And for me, absolutely. And I think the performance is significantly better now in 2024. So I'll let you be the judge of that. I did have to turn some of the graphics down, but we were kind of hovering around 35 for most of it, which is good enough for me. There'll be a little bit of stuttering, but nothing too distracting. All right, let's do this. So this is London City Airport, and I was under the impression that this place was much older than it actually is. Once I started researching it, I discovered that they only built this in 1987. I figured that this was like the original airport for London, but that was not the case. It sounds like they decided to build it to make it a little bit easier for executives that were trying to get to downtown instead of coming from Heathrow. And I don't know when they built Heathrow either. But this place is about half the distance, well, if Heathrow is twice as far as this, let's just put it that way. But this runway, as you can see, is pretty short. It's only 5,000 feet, so they are not flying any big jets. Let's get those flaps up. When I was looking at the planes that do fly out here, it's what you'd probably expect. A lot of prop planes, ATRs, dashes, and some of the smaller regional jets. I think they did fly A318s out here, though, so that was probably one of the bigger ones I saw. And I think you also have to have like a special certification. If you're coming in from the north, it is tight. You are really flying down close to those buildings right there in front of us. It's a pretty cool approach if you're coming in that way, but I don't know how often the wind blows from that direction. Okay, a couple of big buildings right here. Well, for one thing, this area that we're flying in right now is called the Royal Docks, which are the largest enclosed docks in the world. And they're called enclosed because they have 2 locks back at the other end of them, which we'll see as we're coming back in. But this big building down to our right is the Excel London Convention Center. That opened in 2000 and has right around 100,000 square meters of floor space under roof. And I don't know if that is the convention center out here or not. Directly over our glare shield, which I got to keep climbing up so we'll not be able to see it. Can we just see it? Right at the end of this waterway, we'll take a look at it at the end, is where London City Hall is. Which seemed weird. I figured that'd be closer to downtown. But it looks fairly new too. It doesn't look like much here in the sim, so we're not missing anything. But it's right at the end of this water here. Kind of a neat looking contemporary style building. And then over here to the left is the cloud cable cars, known locally as the Dangleway. And look at that, they are animated. They're actually moving across that. And that's one of the things that without the ORBX pack does not look good. You can't see the cable cars, and those pylons there don't look all that great. So that was definitely an improvement with the ORBX pack. And then that huge white thing over there is the O2 Arena. That's a multi-purpose place that opened in 2007. And believe it or not, that is the 9th largest building in the world by volume, which they say can only hold about 20,000 people, which seems like a waste of space, but I'm not a civil engineer. And that one, both in the sim and ORBX, looks about the same. So I think that was an in-sim POI for that one. And you can kind of tell the ORBX stuff, like these colorful buildings here, that's all the ORBX stuff. Those to the right there of that waterway don't look great. All these colorful ones down here to our left are probably ORBX add-ons. I don't know why they decided to make those buildings, but maybe there's some kind of landmark out here. And there's just so much to talk about out in this area. I'm going to miss a lot of stuff, I'm sure. I'm just trying to highlight the things that'll really jump out at you if you're flying around. I didn't see too many trees growing out of buildings around here either. The trees look pretty realistic. And look at all this little bits of junk and stuff piled up down here on the left. That is fantastic. Look at that. You know I love that. Just beautiful. Very detailed. Really looks great. Okay, up next will be the massive London Stadium, built for the 2012 Summer Olympics and is now home to the West Ham United Football Club. See those tanks right there? Those were also done up by ORBX, and I know that because they looked different without it in there, so I don't know why they touched those up, but that's also modded up by ORBX. They look pretty similar. I mean, they made them so close, I don't know why they spent the effort on it, but they are different. So the stadium opened in 2012, and that white top thing over to the right of it is their aquatic center, which I'm guessing they also built for the Olympics. But you see that thing in between the two of them sticking up in the air? That is called the orbit. It was supposed to be both a multi-tiered observation tower and also a sculpture, something to really wow visitors for the games. But I think it didn't open until 2013. But they did open it, and it is wild looking. And to whatever extent it is a work of art, at a height of 376 feet, it is considered the largest in Great Britain. We're getting a little bit of turbulence up here, aren't we? Hope Will didn't start throwing up back there. Okay, so this stadium here is one thing that I thought did look better without the add-on pack. It was just a lot more detailed on the sides. We'll see it better. I'll tell you what I'm talking about as we come around here. Down underneath that top lip, there's lots of, like, framing, and I don't know what it looks like in real life. So I'm assuming the photogrammetry looks better, or maybe it looked different at one time. And if you look down on the top of it without the add-on pack, you could see the seating and all that better. I mean, it looks good enough. Look at that. Look at the orbit. Look at that thing. How wild is that? So that one's a toss-up for me. I personally think it looked a lot better without the ORBX pack, but it's all worth it for the gondolas, in my opinion. How's our altitude doing? All right, we're okay. It's kind of tough with this thing because any little gust of wind, you know, you feel like you got it all trimmed out, and then all of a sudden a gust of wind comes and boom, you're up in the air again. So you really got to mind that thing. As usual, the fields out here, as most of the UK, look really, really good. I don't know why this part of the world, just all the fields look so great. They really do. All these buildings are really... This is a nice stretch of photogrammetry right here. All these buildings look really good. Okay, a really quick history of London while we head over to our next spot. The oldest archaeological remains of modern humans in this area are some timbers from a wooden structure of some type of building they found down along the foreshore of the Thames. I think it was a foundation of something, and they dated that to around 5000 BC, but they found signs of our pre-Homo sapien ancestors all over England going back nearly 1 million years. I think they said the oldest ones were like 850,000 years. But London put itself on the map when the Romans arrived in roughly 47 AD, giving it the name Londinium. And during the peak of Roman prosperity around 200 years later, it could boast a population of around 60,000. And every single one of them could have jammed into London Stadium if anyone had the good sense to build something like that back then. Look at this stuff down here. They got a lot of those, like, framed tanks down there. See that? To our left? I wonder what's up with that. I don't recall seeing anything like that in the US, but we've seen them in a lot of European cities. As the Roman Empire collapsed in the 400s, so did the city, which was all but abandoned until the Anglo-Saxons arrived, building it back into a minor port town in the late 600s AD, only to die off again in the 800s thanks to repeated Viking invasions, one of the perils of living near a long and navigable river in those days. You know, one of the great things about modded up cities is the buildings have reflections on them. Realistic looking reflections. All the photogrammetry generally either has static reflections that were just part of the picture they took, but as we get closer, let's see if any of the... See that really tall pointed building on the other side? I mean, you can see like the sun and the reflections changing on it, which I love, and thankfully they did most of the big buildings down here like that. Vegas is really bad about that. If you've flown out there in 2024, they've got perma reflections on there, which really takes away from the realism to me. By the 11th century, London was firmly established as the largest population center in the British Isles, and Westminster Abbey was also built around that time. That little factoid always blows my mind. In fact, William the Conqueror took the crown there in 1066. Look at that field down there. And he was also the one that built the Tower of London, by the way. So that thing's old. Alright, see that thing that looks like the U.S. Capitol over there? That is St. Paul's Cathedral. Built on the highest piece of ground in the city and completed in 1710. And that was one of many iconic buildings that became part of the city's great reconstruction after the even greater Great Fire of London in 1666, which was obviously a very satanic year in general. And that thing was the tallest building in London all the way up until 1963, which is pretty wild when you consider today's skyline. Probably a parking garage is taller than that. That blue-topped building right in front of us is the British Museum. It was established in 1753 and covers pretty much all the bases when it comes to interesting things to learn about. It was the first public museum ever to touch on such a wide range of disciplines and currently holds the global record for its collection of over 8 million assorted and fascinating things. And it looks great here in the sim. It's also the most visited attraction in the country, and that would definitely be one of them if I was out here. Alright, in just a second we're going to see the BT Tower, which was the tallest structure in the city until 1980. There it is right there, just underneath our little bar. Kind of hard to spot because it's the same color as everything else. But when completed in 1964, which was the building that beat out St. Paul's Cathedral for height, its original function was as a telecom tower with a revolving restaurant, of course. But they also built some office space into the bottom of it, along with the obligatory observation decks. This green space we'll see over here to our left in just a moment is Regent's Park. That used to be Holy Land until the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1500s, after which all formerly Holy Land became the property of the Crown. And today it plays host to all kinds of parks and gardens, along with the London Zoo, which is going to be right up here along this northern edge. We'll see what all we can spot down there. That's it, just above that brown patch there. We'll see if we can see anything. It's not too treed over in here, so maybe we'll be able to spot some stuff, unlike most zoos. And that thing is the world's oldest scientific zoo, although I'm not really sure what that means, because I figured they do science at pretty much every zoo. But it opened in April of 1828. And just a few years later, in 1831, they transferred over all the animals that were wandering around in the inner gardens of the Tower of London, so you could actually see the grass under all the animal crap. And it was finally opened to the public in 1847. But this place has racked up quite a few firsts. It also opened the first reptile house, first public aquarium, first insect house, and first children's zoo, all over the span of about 100 years, with the kids area going in last in 1938. That stadium right up there is Lord's Cricket Ground. It was established in 1814 and is often referred to as the home of cricket, which I wouldn't know anything about because I know nothing about cricket, other than people have told me it's pretty boring. I know that's sacrilege for fans of cricket. But it's also home of the world's oldest sporting museum, and I'm just going to assume that's also dedicated to cricket, but I couldn't find any additional information confirming that. It looks great. Look at that thing. And I don't know, that looks like standard photogrammetry, and I'm kind of grateful for that because it looks fantastic. Look at this stuff. This is a really nice area right here. A little bit of popping, just the tiniest bit, not really any stuttering. Once we get back over the Thames, we're going to get just a little touch of stuttering. There's Paddington Station right down there to our left. They've been docking trains in that place since 1838. We'll see a few big stations out here. And it looks good too, really good. Alright, see that pond up there right underneath our little bar? That sits in front of Kensington Palace, the official residence of William and Kate currently, along with a gaggle of their royal relatives. It started life as a private mansion in 1605 before being purchased by the William and Mary in 1689, and it has remained a royal residence ever since. And I don't know, I guess I'd never really thought about where the rest of the royals were. Ooh, look at that. They got a building they're rebuilding with a hole in the ground. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Boy, it looks like they just gutted something and left the edifice outside and they're rebuilding it. Okay, so just to the right of that pond there, that's Kensington Palace. And this road running right behind it to the right of it, that's where all of the foreign embassies are. Most of them. The U.S. embassy is down along the river. But that's pretty cool. But there was like, I don't know, 10 other royals living in that place with them. Not in the embassy houses, but the Kensington Palace. And down along the southern fringe over there, you can see, we'll see a couple different landmarks. The one closest to us, sticking up in the air, is the Albert Memorial, built by his heartbroken widow, Queen Victoria, in 1872. And directly across from that is the iconic Royal Albert Hall, also opened by Victoria just a year earlier. And that's a performing arts center, in the off chance that you've never heard of it. And then 2 blocks to the south from there, right behind that clock tower or whatever that is, sticking up on the other side of that, to the right of that, there's a whole bunch of museums. They got one for science, one for history, and even a clock museum, which I think would probably be pretty cool to see. And you can tell that the Albert Hall and the Memorial are both ORBX add-ons. Their color's a little bit lighter than everything else, but this stuff looks great. All right, we're going to get a little bit of stuttering here because we're coming up on the big Ferris wheel, which is animated. So we'll probably just have a little bit of shimming. I've had it for all my test flights. Look at that. No trees growing out of buildings that I can spot. They definitely look a little bit oversized, but pretty good. Pretty realistic. Okay, dead ahead of us is the big house. Buckingham Palace, official residence of the monarchy since Queen Victoria backed her U-Haul up there in 1837. But that was always home for royals, being first occupied by the Duke of Buckingham in 1703. And it's worth noting that Charles and Camilla are not currently living there. They're staying in a townhouse right around the corner while they complete some renovations at that place. The internet said they plan on moving back in 2027. And if you look just to the right there, see that blue top building? It's kind of orange with some blue domes on the top of it. That's Westminster Cathedral, not to be confused with the Abbey. And that's actually fairly new in the grand scheme of things out here. It was completed in 1903 and is the largest Catholic church in England. So the U.S. Embassy, I think, is somewhere directly in front of us. It's really hard to pick out. We'll look at the map at the end and see if I can find it, but you can tell there's all kinds of stuff over there. I couldn't spot it. Look, kids, Big Ben Parliament. There it is, right down there along the water. The actual name of that building is the Palace of Westminster. And just in case you didn't know it, Big Ben is not the name of the clock tower, but the gigantic bell inside of it. And there's the far more famous abbey of the same name as that last cathedral. It is Westminster. It's believed the first structure probably went up there in 959 AD, when the land it was sitting on now was an island in the river. But the first phases of what we see today were probably completed around 100 years later. Look at that. That looks great. Really good. That has been the location of 40 royal coronations, 18 royal burials, and at least 16 weddings since 1100. So a lot of British history has gone down in that place. And there's Paddington, or Waterloo Station there. That's what that one is. I'm not even going to comment on the eye. That's a big Ferris wheel. Although that one actually does seem to get a lot of visitors. They say that's the #1 paid attraction in the country, unlike every other one of those ever built anywhere in the world. And I think it's like 400 feet high, but they have one in Dubai now that's twice as high as that thing. And speaking of big things, that massive building up ahead is the Shard, that really pointy one. Currently the tallest building in the country at a height of just over 1,000 feet. And crossing the river just to the north of it is the London Bridge, which, despite claims to the contrary, looks to be in pretty good shape from here. That's it right there, right underneath our bar. And once we come around it, down on the water, we'll see the HMS Belfast, launched in 1938, and that saw all kinds of action until she was decommissioned in 1963 and became a museum ship 8 years later. There it is right there on the other side of the Shard. And you'll certainly recognize the next stop downriver. It's the famous Tower Bridge, which has been adorning postcards since its completion in 1894. And right at the other end of that is perhaps the most famous castle in the world, the Tower of London. And if I had my way, I would just circle around that thing for an hour so I could tell you all about it, but it wouldn't be fair to Big Ben, who got nary a mention. But I bet you could probably find some information about that on YouTube. Probably thousands of videos worth of information. Alright, as we head back towards the airport, we're going to come across one more big clump of landmarks, so I'll tell you about what's going on up there as we head that way, and then we'll try to spot everything. Let's see what's going on down along the river here. So you see there's a little bit of fuzziness around some of those piers sticking out in the water, but I don't actually recall seeing too much tiling. And it's kind of funny, one thing I've noticed in 2024, probably because of the streaming, is that from flight to flight, you'll really get different performance. I mean, when it's all stored on your computer, it's pretty much the same in between flights, but sometimes it's worse than others. The tiling was really bad on my test flight, but I didn't really notice too much of it at all. There's some more great-looking fields. Okay, so right along the south shore of the Thames up here is the University of Greenwich, located on the property of the old Royal Navy College. And the school itself isn't that interesting, but just on this side of it, we will see the Cutty Sark Museum, adored by budget-minded alcoholics the world over for its light blend and easy finish. But they've also got the Cutty Sark on display down there, one of the last and fastest of the great clippers to be built as steamers rapidly replaced all the tall ships. And like most old things, she's been damaged by a fire a few times in her history, but certainly not ancient history. They've had to extinguish that boat twice since 2007, which they said they weren't really destructive fires, but I can't imagine why it caught on fire. And then the National Maritime Museum will also be up here, which is connected to a place called the Queen's House. That is yet another royal residence built in 1635 on the former site of Greenwich Palace, which incidentally is where Henry VIII was born. And today they use it as a public art gallery. And finally, coolest of all in my opinion, is the Royal Observatory in the middle of Greenwich Park. They completed that in 1675 on the spot where Greenwich Castle used to be, not the palace. And that place was used by the Tudors as both a hunting lodge and a mistress hideout. Okay, so there's the Cutty Sark right along the water there. It's not in the water, it's out of the water in that light brown spot. And then the Queen's House is right up there at the other end of that green garden, and just on this side of it, that building with the gray-looking roof, is where the Maritime Museum is. Pretty neat looking. Looks a little bit sterile. I'm thinking they probably could have gotten away with leaving that as photogrammetry, but at least you can see it well. They pulled all the trees away from it. All right, and right down in the middle of all these trees here to our left is where the Royal Observatory is. We'll see if we can spot anything down there. That one's pretty treed over in real life, too. You can kind of see some domes down there where the telescopes would be. But aside from being the location of all kinds of history-making astronomy, it is also the spot through which the Prime Meridian passes, and namesake of Greenwich Mean Time, which is the precursor to the UTC time that all of us know and love here in the aviation world. Okay, we've got one last stadium up here, which is known as the Valley, current home of the Carlton, or maybe Charlton, Athletic Football Club. But they've been playing soccer down there since 1919, though it did get a big makeover in 1991. I think this one looks really good in the sim, too. I don't know if it's been touched up or not, but you can see down the stands and the fields and all look pretty good. That's it just above our bar there on the left. Okay, so some quick announcements before I tell you about my plan for the trolls. If you want to take this flight just like we are, as always, it will be linked in the video description. All you'll have to do is download that, bring it in a little NavMap, adjust it if you like, load it into the sim, and away you'll go. The bookmark file will also be in there. If you don't know how to do any of that, if you're not familiar with how to use little NavMap, I recently posted a tutorial on how to do all that stuff within about 20 minutes. Get you up and running. Little NavMap is free and a great application to use for sightseeing trips. Look at this stadium. You can even see some words on the seats over there. See that? Ooh, their field doesn't look too good, does it? Maybe they're returfing it. That looks cool. Really good. C-A-F. What's the last letter? Probably C. Okay, so let me tell you what my plan is with the trolls. I'm going to start creating something called the Troll Bowl. So we have our quarterly flight plan competition where we all vote on the best user-submitted, member-submitted flight plans each quarter as a sim community. But I'm going to give the trolls something to do too, as if they don't have enough. I'm going to take the best, and that's going to be my judgment call, the best troll comment for the quarter. At the end of the quarter, I will read the troll's comment. I will give your YouTube user handle, so you'll get all the credit for it. No plagiarism here. And I will offer you $25 if you are the one that I pick. So the quarterly flight plan competition member for now wins $50. You're going to get half of that. But there's a catch. There's a risk to this. Your comment will still never be posted. I will read it live. I will give your name to the extent that we know it. But you will be blocked. So it will never make it to the comment section, and you'll never be able to comment on our channel again. But I will give you full credit for your post. and you will have 48 hours after I announce it to contact me on Discord, because I have to email you the gift card. You can pick a $25 gift card to the sim vendor of your choice. I'll send it to you via email. I won't harass you about being a troll. It'll be totally cool, totally clean. But you will have to join us on Discord, and you will have to watch our flights to find out if you're the winner. If you have not responded to claim your gift within 48 hours, I'm going to give that $25 to the winner of the quarterly flight plan competition. So chances are, look at that, that looks like a prison. And it has a big wall around it too. I bet that is a prison. If you're like most trolls, you probably never go back to see if anyone responds to your comments, but if you do, you will win $25. So anything that's like threats of violence, things like that, automatically disqualified. But if it's creative, if it's funny, and definitely if it's insulting, you may make the cut. So that way everybody gets to win. You'll get to claim the fame as a troll, give you something to do, force you to be creative if you want to make the cut. And if you don't claim it, we're going to give it to the winner of the flight plan competition, which will be awesome. So we're going to call it the Troll Bowl. Everyone will get to see your handiwork. See that big mound down there, just underneath our bar? I thought that might be an old hill fort or something, but it's a big pile of fill dirt that they turned into a park with what they call an observation area on the top of it. But people on Google were saying that the views aren't that great, so now it's just a big pile of dirt. Give it some flaps here. So you can see the two locks. One of them is really small. Let's see if we can see the other one. I don't think I can get the bar down enough to see it on the other side there. That make this the largest enclosed dock in the world. By the way, guys, I did get my new crosswind pedals in and installed. They are great. Definitely an upgrade from my old Satec pedals. I don't know if I'd call them a game changer, but they just do feel a lot better, and I think they're going to be better for the helicopter flights because they're a lot more adjustable and they definitely feel more lifelike. I've never used real pedals in a real plane, but I know the Satecs don't feel very lifelike. They're cheap and plasticky. Definitely got the job done and would definitely be better than not having any pedals at all. There's the other locks over there to the left, just underneath our bar. But I got to focus on the runway here. So I like them quite a bit. Unfortunately, they did not include any instructions, and I think a guy in Croatia makes them, so I even went onto the product page to see if I could find some videos or anything. I just had to search for the videos in YouTube. I mean, it was kind of self-explanatory, but there were a few things I wasn't sure of. And I got the hydraulic damper, which I think makes the biggest difference. It's cool. It makes it feel very, very lifelike. So if you're thinking about getting them, they're not cheap, but I was wanting that was going to be my next big upgrade before I rebuild my computer next year. So they're definitely cool. I like them quite a bit. That is for sure. All right, let's see if we can get the... Boy, this thing starts... It doesn't like coming down, but once you're down, it doesn't like staying in the air. I gotta mind that throttle here. You know, one of the great things about being able to pull these side panels off, the only thing I really didn't like about this plane is you get some kind of weird flashing effect. You can see on the front one there, those lines going up, which is probably pretty realistic. I don't know what that's reflecting. But on the sides, if there's any clouds out, it makes this kind of like flashing effect that was a little bit distracting, so it's nice to be able to pull those off. I'm glad I accidentally discovered that. Okay, let's slow this baby down. Slow her on down here. I think there's another taxiway up here somewhere. So anyway, if you're a troll, get in on the action. Now you have a reason to be here. Not only am I not concerned about you putting posts up there, but I want to see the best you've got. You better bring your A game, or you are not going to make the cut. Well, where's the taxiway? Yep, okay, that is the taxiway up there. That's where we're going to go. And let's come on over here. So I probably need to apply some back pressure on this thing because we do have tail dragger, but the engine's at the back of it, so the center of gravity is probably set pretty far forward on this thing, I would think. And we'll probably get to park right where we left from, at least pretty close to it. What a skyline the city has. I would love to come out anywhere in Europe, really. These old cities, I mean, the United States doesn't even know old compared to this stuff. So much history. I don't remember exactly where we parked, but I'm just going to pull right over here. Looks pretty good to me. I don't see any jetways over here, so this is probably perfect. Okay. Oh, finger brakes, finger brakes. There we go. Alright, we'll turn her off, probably just by turning the ignition off. Great. Alright, here comes a little NavMap. Alright, we followed that pretty closely, didn't we? That was a good job, despite the turbulence. Okay, so we'll take the centering off. Okay, so there's the airport, and here's the Royal Docks out here, and just in case I forget it later, here are, so let's see, one, no, it looks like there's just 2 sets of locks out there. That's a set, I don't even know if these are locks here. Oh yeah, they're tiny there, see that? Yep, alright, and then there's some bigger ones there, but, I mean, what kind of ship is going through those? Look how low that bridge appears to be. Alright, so as we came out here, there's the convention center, and then here is the City Hall, which looks a lot more white in real life than it did in the sim. I saw some pictures from the ground. The sides of it appear to be all white too, but it's a neat looking building if you check it out from the ground. And then here is where the cloud, well, it's not the cloud, it's the Dangleway coming through here. Whatever that thing was called. The Dangleway is what they call it locally. Can we see any of them floating? Yep, you can see the shadows anyway. I don't see the actual gondolas, but you can definitely see the shadows down there. That'd be pretty cool. I'd rather ride that than the Ferris wheel. And then here's the O2, 9th largest building in the world by volume. And then we came up here to the big stadium. Let's see if we can see the orbit very well from here. Yeah, that's pretty close to what it looked like in the sim. I mean, that is something that's got to be hard to model, and it looked like that one was probably photogrammetry. But that is a wild-looking thing, isn't it? And you can tell how big it is. Look at the shadow going down there. And since we can't see the sides of this building, I can't tell what it's supposed to look like in real life, because that would be the giveaway. The top looks about right here. And then there's the aquatic center. We saw that thing. All right, then we came over this way. I think the next spot is going to be St. Paul's Cathedral. There it is. That looked pretty cool in the sim. And then the British Museum, you are not going to miss this thing. So as you're coming around this, if you're trying to just VFR fly it, just look for that, the blue thing for the British Museum, and just kind of point towards that. Then you'll come across St. Paul's Cathedral. You won't miss that either. And again, the BT tower is kind of tough to spot because it's the same color as all of these surrounding buildings and everything. If you're flying low enough, you definitely see it. But that's just going to be a little bit to the west of the British Museum. Then we came over here. I bookmarked Queen Mary's Rose Garden, but it didn't look like much at all in the sim, so I didn't bother researching whatever that is. And then here's the London Zoo. Let's see how accurate that was. So this thing here was called the Outback. And it looks like that it doesn't appear to be. So this is probably the viewing area here. That pavilion. They probably have a restaurant in there too. Oh yeah, and they got a few different. They got the wallabies, the kangaroos, emus. I wonder what they keep in this big area here. I wonder if they ever have any kangaroo boxing. That'd be awesome. There's Lord's Cricket Ground, home of the oldest sports museum that's still functional. That looked really good too. Really good. And there's Paddington Station, and then here's Kensington Palace, which I just felt like that should have looked gigantic for some reason, because they always look pretty big from the ground, but that's it. All these gardens looked really good too in the sim. That pond looked pretty good. And then here's the Albert Memorial, which really looked way better in the sim since we're looking down on top of it. There's Royal Albert Hall. And then here's where the museums are. So Science, T-Rex Restaurant. Oh yeah, those places are awesome. We have one of those down at Universal. And then, let's see, Science. I think this one's the History Museum over here. And then the Clock Museum is over here somewhere. I think it's on this side of it. So let's just see what else we got down here. So this stadium looks really good. Stamford Bridge. And while we're over here, let's just cruise over this way. I mean, these are just kind of some neat big buildings that they had out here. Looked okay. I mean, if you're going to fly from Heathrow, might as well check them out. But there was a few that looked really good. So we got a big stadium down here. That looks pretty cool. Allianz Stadium. Again, man, every city in the world's got an Allianz Stadium. This race course looks really good. There is a big palace out here somewhere. Oh, Windsor Castle, of course, yeah. There's Windsor. That's really cool. Really, really cool. And I think there was one more out here somewhere. Maybe not. But you can't miss Wimbledon if you're coming out here. That, of course, looks amazing in the sim. And there it is. So let's just measure real quick. I was thinking that that airport that we left from was pretty... Well, it is. It looks like it's quite a bit closer. So if we go from Heathrow to downtown, that's about 12 miles. Oh, yeah, that looks like it's like half the distance. Because there we are right at the center of the runway. And that one is... Yeah, it's about half the distance. So it is closer for sure. Okay, getting back down to business over here. So here's the U.S. Embassy. And maybe I was just looking in the wrong spot, because I was trying to kind of look for this diamond-shaped thing and then look right across the river, but it's over this way more. And I don't know what the side profile of it looks like. And you can tell it's just tucked down there with everything else. It appears to be pretty tall, judging by the shadow there. So if you want to try to spot it, that's where it is. So I guess if you're coming over this side of the diamond, it's pointing right at the building. So that'd be where it is. Here's Buckingham. All this stuff looked great. St. James Place. This is where Charles and Camilla are staying right now while they're waiting for their place to be completed. And then here's Downing Street, where the Prime Minister lives. There's 10 Downing Street, right there. And let's see, Westminster Castle, or Cathedral. And that was just, you know, it looked neat in the sim, but not a lot of history with that. But this one definitely does. Here's the Abbey. Awesome. And there's the Palace of Westminster, where Parliament is. And then there's Big Ben, the clock tower, right there. There was the eye that I think probably caused all the stuttering problems down here. Waterloo Station just next to that. And then we get over to the Shard, which looked really good. Man, they got train stations everywhere out here. I wonder how many people commute. Because it's not like Manhattan where there's just, the traffic is just so jammed up. They've got some much more open areas here, I feel like, than Manhattan. But there's so many train stations and tube stations that I imagine a lot of people probably travel that way. I know it's a bigger deal in Europe than it is in the US for people to travel by rail. There's the Belfast. Yep, if you don't put the add-on pack in, it's going to just be two big, like, super yachts parked right there. And you can even see the outline of the Belfast underneath them. Tower of London, which looked pretty cool. The Tower Bridge looked amazing. That looked really good. That was very well modeled. And then we cruised over this way. I put a bookmark on this thing because it was kind of interesting, but it was just so jammed in down there. I did look at that when I was first going to do the 2020 trip in London. There's something kind of interesting about that. The Crossrail Place roof garden, but I can't remember what it was. Okay, so now we get down here by the University of Greenwich, and there's the old Cutty Sark. Is your mouth watering just looking at it? And then here's the Queen's House and the National Maritime Museum. These look pretty good. They looked a little bit sterile. They probably have a little bit more texture in real life, but they were good enough for me. And I wonder what is up with... You can see that most of the fields are green. I wonder why these are so brown looking. Isn't that interesting? Because everything else around here is pretty green. Well, I got some brown ones over there. And then here's the Royal Observatory, which is in a pretty treed area. And whatever that thing is looked right, too, in the sim. I was wondering, I looked down at that, I thought it was a glitch of some kind because the top's cut off, but that's their planetarium. It looks like they do have some telescopes out there. And then where our last stop, we saw the Valley Stadium, which we could kind of see up into that and see the stands, which we can't see here, which was really cool. And their turf looks a lot better there than it did in the sim, doesn't it? And then I told you about the Troll Bowl, and we came on in. So there is Galleon's Hill. It has a different name in Google. It's not called Galleon's Hill, but whatever that is, that was fill dirt from somewhere. And most people said that it's not all that great of a view. But what kid doesn't love climbing the top of a big hill, especially with a spiral walkway up to the top? Then we came on in. So that's London, guys. Not sure where we're going to go next. I have got a ton of recommendations that we've got to check out. I'm going to fly all of them, and you can count on one thing for sure. It's going to be awesome wherever it is. Learned a lot of things as usual, and I cannot wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.